This video is brought to you by BTI Institute, a New Jersey leader in certification-based management training.
Bob and I have shared our enthusiasm in the world of agility. We bring different stories, and we've got a great topic today that you'll start seeing. Bob, get a little deck. We keep it lighthearted. We try to keep it engaging. Please feel free to use the chat. And if you have any questions, you can raise your hand, or if you think it's not too disruptive, you can ask quickly. And again, at about 7 o'clock, it's a little bit more informal, and we'll go from there. So yeah, I've been talking a little bit about myself. I work with initial adoptions to enterprise transformations. One of the exciting initiatives I was a part of where we potentially saved human lives using Scrum, bringing about lab safety. So that's a little bit about me. Bob, can you hear us okay? You want to go next?
Yes, can you guys see and hear me? And I'm also sharing my screen, so hopefully you can see it.
Yes.
I've been with the PMI chapter for quite some time.
Yeah, no, that's quite all right.
Can someone mute that person, please?
No, they get you get hit with a million of those things. So that's
all right. Thank you. So
we file as much as we can for the SAP teams so they know what things are.
Someone's still on mute.
Thank you. All right. I've been with the chapter. I'm the director of Agile Learning with the PMI New Jersey chapter. And I appreciate the opportunity to share ideas and information with this group. And pretty much I need to say, I guess if there's a way to keep that person permanently muted, that'd be great. But anyway, what I'm about to share tonight are my personal views because I work at the Federal Reserve. And so anything I say does not reflect the opinion of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York or the Board of Governors. And so with that said, Nitin, you can do, we basically have noticed the power drums, two perspectives, one philosophy, and it really works. All right, so now, we're talking about integral agile, and it's basically looking at things through different lenses. So this is a famous painting by Octavio, and basically he's a painter from Mexico. And this painter actually puts faces into the paintings. And so just taking a look at this, you could say, okay, I could see maybe, oh, I see a face here, I see a face here, I see a big face here, I see one over here, right? So I'm going to give you a little bit better review. So I will tell you there are more than 4 faces in this painting. So just take a look at it. And what we're going to do is we're going to be using Mentimeter. And so if you can go to menti.com and enter that code 3976157, I will swing over to Mentimeter.
Can you provide the code again?
Sure. It's 3976157. And so the question is, based on what I showed you, how many faces do you see? And now it can tell you there's definitely more than 5. But so, there's really no right or wrong answer because it's art. It's really up to the person, looking at it. So if you guys can jump into Mentimeter, that would be great. And keep Mentimeter running because we're going to be doing this again. So far, we got 3 participants. Let's see if we can get a good part of our crowd in here. So, this is fun because the next part, we're going to actually be playing a game. So, you might not want to skip this. So you might want to get logged into Mentimeter. So far, 6 people said they saw 3 faces. Pretty obvious here, 1, 2, 3. But I would even say here, there's a face of a baby. So maybe, maybe it's 4. And also there's a QR code on my screen. If you would just want to use your phone, you can, basically, I see that there's 18 people that have found this. All right, so far, some people said 5, some 4, some 8, some 3 people said there's 8 faces in the image. And when I was doing this presentation with Nitin, this painting really fascinated me because every time I looked at it, I saw another face. I thought it was really interesting. All right, so again, there will be more Mentimeter. So, you might want to join menti.com using 3976157 or using that QR code that's on the bottom left of the screen. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to exit out of here and go back to the presentation. All right, so taking a look at the picture. Now, Integral Agile is a way where you look at things through different lenses. So now what if I said there's 4 areas where there's some faces. All right, so now I'm kind of helping a little bit, basically with these 4 different lenses. So now if I was to give you an idea of how many faces there are, at least these are faces that Bob found. I'm sure there's more that the artist knows about. But if you look over here, there's possibly 2. There's 1 here and 1 over here, possibly. In the middle, there's 4. You have the main face and this person's face, the baby's face, and the woman's face. On the right-hand side, we have 2. You can see the face there. And again, this is really helping because we now have a lens where we're actually focusing in on a certain area. And so this is really interesting when you start looking at the things. Now, you have to kind of really look hard and imagine, but if you think about it, there's 2 eyes here and a nose, and then there's faces here. There's a face here, here, and here. And again, people, when they view art, they see things differently, but now that I'm pointing it out, you might start really seeing these faces. And this last one, you wouldn't believe there's 6 in such a little area. Like you can see here, there's it looks like a face over here and a face here, but actually there's 2 faces if you look at it. There's a face facing over this way, there's a face over here and 1 here and 2 over here. So it's really interesting how by just taking a lens, you can actually see something differently rather than looking at the whole painting. And again, just to take a look at it, if you want to, stretch it even further, you can say there might even be a face here if you think about it. There's a nose and an eye and an eye. It's just really cool. And think about it, as a painter, when you paint something, being able to design it that way. So now enough of that. So now let's talk about what this integral model is. All right, so this was developed by Ken Wilber, and he wrote a really great book called Reinventing Organizations, where he talks about red, green, orange, teal as far as the organization structure, but we're not going to be talking about today. But he came up with this model where you have 4 quadrants. So just like that painting where we're looking at 4 different things, in the integral model, we look at a quadrant called I, we look at a quadrant called it, and then we look at a quadrant called its, and then we look at a quadrant called we. And so in these quadrants, basically on the top half of this, we're looking at the individual, and at the bottom, we're looking at the group, and then on the left, we're looking at interior and exterior. So this is the model, and Nitin and I are going to take you through this tonight as far as how you can actually use this to look at your teams. And so really to kind of sum it up, I'm going to read this. It's a comprehensive framework that incorporates essential perspectives and different schools of thought. So this didn't really come up out of nowhere when it was developed. There's a lot of research that's behind it as far as how things operate, how people work, how teams work. And basically, if you were to just zero in, let's say we zero in on the I quadrant, all we would be looking at are my thoughts and feelings. If we were looking at the it quadrant, we'd be looking at artifacts and results. Things like, what does the Scrum team deliver? Like, what comes out? And if we look at the we quadrant, we'd be looking at things that the team does, like how do we work together? And then in the it's quadrant, we're looking at the environment that we're in. Like, how is our space located? Is everybody remote? Are we sitting in an office? Do we have a team room where we can all openly communicate? And you don't have to be quiet like you're in a library. So I just want to just touch base real quickly. Is this making sense so far? And Nitin, I'm hoping if you're seeing anything in the chat, you could bring it up.
Yep, I'm taking a look there. No comments so far.
Okay. Now, in the I quadrant, if you think about it, Dan Pink's intrinsic motivators into autonomy, mastery, and purpose. You also include things like your goals, your skills. This is all you. This is all on the inside. This is how you see yourself, how you basically want to be, like how you want to work. Like as Agilists, we want to basically enable people to basically be the best. And then the next quadrant is the it. And basically this could be how the type of work that we do, our behavior, how we express ourselves, and the different products that we offer. And now this is going to eventually get tied into, Scrum and Agile, but this is a model that was actually, that this Ken Wilber model was actually taken and then applied to Agile, as you're going to see. And then on the interior, it has to do with the team. How does the team get along? And those unspoken roles, like how do people, respect each other? How do people work with each other? What are the norms? What kind of relationships do we have? What's the morale? So those all fall into the we quadrant. And then the it's quadrant has to do with the tools that people have, the location, where they work. Like some companies give away free coffee and stuff like that. Is there a coffee room? Are there places to chat? So in essence, these are the four lenses. So what we're going to be doing is when we're looking at teams, we're going to be looking at it through an I lens, like how do the individuals on the team work? And the it lens, basically, what kind of processes do they follow? And the we lens is how does the team work together? And then finally, in the environment lens, the it's lens. And so now, if you want to start thinking about it, like you've probably seen, if you've gone to any of it in my presentations, you've probably seen this whole concept of being Agile versus doing Agile. So basically, on the exterior, we're doing things, and on the interior, we're being. So now, does that sound familiar? Basically, are you actually being Agile? Or are you just doing it exteriorly, like going through the motions and stuff like that? So again, this is taking a very complicated model and kind of summing it all up, but it's really interesting and cool stuff. All right, so now we have the I, it, we, and its perspective. So in first person, it would be like I, like I, and then we would be in the plural. All right, and then in the third person, you talk about he, him, she, her, they, them, and that's basically in the it's and its. So to put it into perspective, if I'm talking to you about a brand new car, I would be the first person, you would be the second person, or we, and the new car, is the third person. And you could argue that it could be the environment, or it could be, the external, how the process is. And so now looking at these four quadrants, if you look at this openness here, is basically you're only seeing very fringe areas of the outside in the I and we. But when it comes to the it and its quadrant, you're seeing only the exterior. So basically, what the white is shown is the interior, and the solid black is showing the exterior. All right, so Nitin, would you like to take over from here?
Yep, thank you for that, Bob. So let's try to give this a little bit more shape. If we were to look at the top left quadrant, it's more towards the mindset. And you've seen these before. There's certain healthy things or unhealthy things that we come across, and they could even be more. We talk about embracing agile principles and values, and we ask people to speak from the heart and be courageous or point out when we see something like that. The more adaptable you are, you will see the willingness to change. And truly, for a cross-functional team, you also want to have them empowered and really just speak up with what it is they need and deliver magic. There could be other things. So on the left side, I've just given a few examples of the healthy. Feel free to put some more in the chat. And on the flip side, if we are finding ourselves with team members that are caught up in blame, judgment, and it's getting to be a little bit more toxic, that's unhealthy, right? And you're never going to come across a team. I mean, you'd be fortunate if everything was on the healthy side, right? So we might find some way of gauging into, well, where are we between all of these? And we've got another visualization. It's almost like the target logo, the bullseye. If you have more of the things on the left, we just consider that to be very strong. And most teams would be a mix between the two, so getting out of the target towards the average. And then the last one is towards the weak. It's a very simple visual that you can share with leadership, upper management, and you can show some of these things as well. And it's something people really grasp and understand there. And you can also weave in the core values and the 12 principles into these as well, if you think about it. So you can, when having retrospectives, for example, or talking to team members, doing initial assessments, just get a sense of where people are at. And because it's more the top left, it's a little bit on the internal. So you may not see it all out openly. You might have to churn, you might have to dig, you might have to call out the obvious. That's also sensing what's out there in the room. It's called the emotional field as well. So that's the top left, the mindset. Let's contrast this to. Go ahead, Bob.
What I wanted to add was when we do this, you don't want. That's why, like, the term healthy and unhealthy was used, because you don't really want to say good or bad, because the last thing you want to do is get the team to be defensive. So that's why, when Nitin was describing the target, it's either strong, you're average, or you're weak. And it's not like you're good, bad, or worse. So again, keeping in mind that this is just a tool that you can use, and you're taking that mind and you're taking that look at the mindset of people. And this is how Integral Agile, we took the integral model, and now the Integral Agile now basically has the left quadrant as mindset, the I part. And then, as you see, as Nitin will be taking you through this, we're going to be touching the other areas. And these are very familiar terms for Agilists.
Thanks, Bob. So practices and roles, this is a little bit more tangible. On a Scrum team, you've got, your sprint planning, your daily scrums after that. You get into refinement, your reviews, and eventually your retrospectives, right? Those are your containers for Scrum. And again, you want to see how well that's flowing, how people are interacting with each other. Can they lean on each other? Are they empowered to ask questions of the product owner, or perhaps even your customers or potential customers as well? And you're going to have your Scrum Master as a master facilitator in all of this. This also gets a little bit into team norms and agreements, which can help on the healthy side. On the flip side, even though you have that container and you have a wonderful calendar, you've mapped out when people should show up and when, they might brush it off. They could be late. They may not be as engaged as well, right? And let's say towards the end of the cycle, they're trying to negotiate something like, hey, can we get a partial credit for the story? And you can plant seeds or ask, hey, if we could split something earlier, why didn't we do this 2 weeks ago? And that gets into creative ways of holding people more accountable and engaged as well. So when teams are starting off, you're going to see a mix of these things, or if they're teams that are fighting fires all the time, you're going to see more on the unhealthy side as well. So again, you could visualize this with a target like this. If you're more on the left, keep it strong. A mix would be an average. Or you could say, hey, we're weaker because we're more on the unhealthy side. And it's an evolution, right? And Scrum is based on transparency, inspection, adaptation, right? Those are the three pillars that we call. With greater transparency, then you can make decisions or hopefully make better decisions or informed decisions. That leads to the inspection. And from the inspection, we get the adaptability as well. This can also help with when you have competitors or we have government mandates or compliance. And underneath all of that, the core of it is trust. Now, if you're taking a leap of faith or you've got a hyper-productive team, they can work together with these pillars and just take the best use of Scrum as an example. So that was the bottom left quadrant that we've seen. So the we side now, team relationships and culture. Again, as a Scrum Master, you might ask some open-ended questions. Hey, how do we want to celebrate? Now, one team might say, hey, we want to just have pizza and subs and go rah, rah, rah. The others would be, hey, let's go outside. Or, hey, I want something on our corporate website. We should really bubble this up to other people and other members of the team. One team might celebrate differently. Likewise, another question is, how do we want to mourn? It's a very unusual, open-ended question because you are going to get disappointed. You're not going to meet all your deadlines. Something's going to happen. And some people say, hey, I just need a breather, or I just need a day to get over this, or hey, I want to be able to talk about this at retrospective, and so on and so forth. They are measuring morals and happiness metrics come into place as well. That's on the healthier side. And empathy is great as is impact feedback that's without criticism that's intended to hurt. It's really intended to have the force of the team come together and work collectively, right? Again, on the flip side, you've all seen this. There's blame, talking behind your back, or just being a superhero and working in a silo. And there could be others as well. Feel free to add them in the chat. So again, very quickly, you can use a bullseye to just reflect to the team and say, hey, we're more on the left side compared to the other side. And again, it's just an evolution. And with that, we'd like to just call out a few years ago, Scrum formalized some values, courage, focus, commitment, respect, and openness will all weave into this over here in this grid. So let's look at something else then. We have another quadrant, bottom right, the environment. This is getting to be a little bit more open and explicit. This could be something tangible that people can actually touch or see what it is. So logistics, are we co-located? Do we have break rooms? Do we have stock rooms? Are we getting breakfast stocked for us, or a cooler or drinks, and so on and so forth, right? The environment matters to some people, and we've had to get creative when COVID-19 hit, right? If it's unhealthy, then you've got component teams. That's just the nature of what they're churning out things. There could be compliance. People are micromanaging. People are spread out thin. You're forcing people to come back very quickly. There's a bit of debate going on right now. Has it been healthier to let people have that flexibility and work from home, versus a hybrid model right now. Right. So again, it's very simple to call these out. There could be more as well. And you can just reflect to the team, say, hey, we're stronger in this one grid, and here's our evolution, and this is where we may or may not be. And certainly, I'm pretty sure you've seen others, and we've got a DevSecOps image here as well that would weave itself over here, because we get into some engineering practices as well, and people talking in continuous integration, continuous deployment, and so on.
And these tables, you know, you could take tomorrow and start using, but this is not, it's really up to you and your team, because there's nothing wrong with you sitting down with your team and saying, okay, in our environment, what would be healthy? In our environment, what would be unhealthy? And it's a very good talking discussion where you could actually talk about each of these quadrants as far as how the team feels about what, you know, good things, and how the team looks at things that might not be so good. And so this is just, you know, you might want to consider this as like a starter set, but it's not, you know, it's just a way to get started. You know, you could take things off, you could add it. It's really up to you. All right, now that you've had a chance to get introduced to the integral model and integral agile, we're going to go to Mentimeter, and this time, if you go there, we're going to have a quiz, and it's going to be actually a game, and we're going to see who wins. And when you log in, you don't have to give your real name if you don't want. So let me swing over to Mentimeter. Okay, this is showing everybody joining. We got 14, 16, 18. Anybody else want to join? 19, 20. We'll leave it open. Oh, somebody dropped out. We're up to 19. All right. Is everybody give a couple more seconds for people to get in? People are joining. Again, go to menti.com and use code 3976157. We got 25 people. 24. We're going to get one more for 25. Let's do it. Okay, let's get started. Oh. All right, I'm going to start. You can join while the quiz is taking place if you decide. All right, so the faster you answer, the more points you get. If we were looking at a squad environment, what quadrant would we be in? And that would be the I, it, we, or its. You have 7 seconds to answer. If you don't answer in time, you don't get the vote, so take a guess. All right, let's see how everybody did. It looks like we got the most, but it's actually its. And so I will show you that. So when you look at the its quadrant, that has to do with the exterior and the environment. And so now you might want to take a screenshot of this, because the other questions are going to be talking about the other quadrants. All right, so this one was its. Our next question. And let's see how we're doing. Let's see who's taking the lead here. It looks like Jerry has 809 points. And very close to Agent X9. I like that. 795 and 738 with Simba. All right. It's still not too late. You know, it's because there's still more questions. All right, here we go. Question number 2. We have 28 people. Again, the faster you answer, the more points you get. If we were to look at how a squad is following Scrum, what quadrant would we be in? 8 seconds left. And the answer is it. So 7 people got that one right. And let's look at why. So now if you look at the it quadrant, basically it's got to do with the Scrum process, the Scrum framework that you're following. And so that's why the answer was it. Next slide. See how we're doing here. Does Jerry still keep the lead? Uh-oh, looks like there's a new leader. Barbara took a commanding lead at 1476. Kate is in second, and Kate is actually showing us the fastest one to respond at 9:36. And Jerry is dropped into 5th place. All right, next slide. All right, we got 27 people. What two quadrants are used to view the interior perspective? Is it I and it and its, we and its, or I and we? You have 8 seconds. All right, I and we, that had the most votes. That was the correct answer. And if you're looking at the model here, you see I and E. We're basically showing the interior perspective. And that also aligns with being, versus doing agile versus exterior, and interior being agile. All right. How do we do on a leaderboard? Did Barbara hold the lead? Let's see. Wow, Barbara's jumping ahead at 21:52. Kate is in second. Again, Kate is the fastest. Jerry's holding to 5th, and Patty's in 3rd. All right, let's go to the next. If we look at a squad's agile mindset, what quadrant would we be in? Got 10 seconds left. It's the I. Okay, it's the we. All right, let's take a look at that. If you think about it, think about I, that's like my thoughts and feelings. We is more on the team. So basically, if you look at a person's mindset, it would be an I. It would fall into the I quadrant. Let's see, is Barbara still holding the lead? Ooh, X9 jumped quite a bit, it looks like. Uh-oh, there's a change. Kate, as the fastest, has 21:93. This is it, the last question. If you're looking at squats between relationships and customs, what quadrant would you be in? We got 6 seconds left. Yay, most people got that correct answer. So now it goes to who was fastest. And again, that's we, showing why it's that quadrant. It's basically has to do with the team, how the team works together. And how we doing? It's between Kate and Barbara, it looks like. It looks like Kate got more points. So the winner is Kate, and also who is also the fastest. Congratulations, Kate. All right, now let's go back to the presentation. All right, so now we're going to look at key skills that you can develop. And so looking in the 4 quadrants, we have mindset, practices, and roles, team relationships, and customs in the environment. So now, so Nitin, did you want to take over on this one on the mindset side?
Sure. So Bob and I spoke about a presentation a while ago. It's called the X Grid, where You have professional coaching, and this is where Scrum Masters also do a dance, right? Professional coaching is really working with your clients or potential clients, having a neutral stance and seeing what's best for them or where they want to head next. So it's more of the soft skills, the emotional intelligence, and seeing what it is that we can do to serve them. There are no right or wrong answers. We're not here to bring bias. No, we all have stories, but this is really in service to the people in front of you. It doesn't have to be someone in upper management or leadership. It could be a peer. It could even be people who are reporting up to you. So that's professional coaching. And you can formalize this with trainings with CTI or ORSC or some other organizations that really help you hone and sharpen these skills. So that's one of them over there. Now, there's teaching and mentoring as well. Initially, we would separate these quite a bit, but for this quadrant and this model, we are combining them. Teaching is fairly simple. There are people who are new to Scrum or Agile or Kanban or any other flavor of agility, and they just need to understand the lingo. If it's Scrum 101 or people who are advanced or scaling, they might have different terminology. Mentoring is bringing your own stories and your experience that may or may not help the person in front of you or the team, but you definitely have something that you can talk to given what's happening at the moment. So that's the quadrant on the top right with the teaching and mentoring. We also have facilitation. Sometimes you're co-facilitating. You want to have a neutral stance. Sometimes it's very hard being a participant and a facilitator. It's almost a no-no in some cases. And you really want to get a feel of the room and get the collective voices of everybody and make sure everybody has at least had an opportunity of being heard or expressed. If you're in a conference room, it's very easy to hear people talk over each other. Some people are extroverts. You can use a game or you can use stickies or notepads for silent writing exercises. Again, this all gets into facilitation so that we truly get the collective from people. So that is that quadrant over there. And something more tangible, analysis. Now that you've got feedback from people, you can certainly use certain tools and see if there are any patterns. Are there any anomalies? Is there anything else that has to be considered? So that's in the bottom right on the it's over there.
All right, so you've probably heard Nitin and I discuss the Agile Coaching Competency Framework. So, Nitin, did you want to take everybody through it?
Yep. So again, this was one of the original X grids. So we talked about the teaching, facilitation, the coaching, and the mentoring, right? And smack in the center, we're lean agile practitioners. We are doing a little dance as a practitioner and being able to identify where we are or where people are. At the bottom, we can go deep over here, either in technical mastery, business mastery, or transformation mastery, depending on where a team is or an organization, depending on the culture. And sometimes you need help here as well. So technical mastery, of course, engineering practices. People are getting into CI, CD, test-driven development, so on and so forth. Business mastery is trying to understand what is the nature and scope of the business, what's happening in the industry, what's happening with the competition, how can people be served with the use of agility in those situations. And transformation is simply going from one area to another. Typically, we talk about waterfall-based organizations heading into something else. What would that look like? Are people receptive to it? What do we have to account for? What's the risk? And again, above it is the 4X grid where we're doing a dance and we are lean agile practitioners.
And so if you look at the picture on the right, if you, again, I'm sorry to make you look at pictures, but we started out looking at a painting. But if you notice anything, does it look a little bit different? Because I noticed like it's got professional coaching on the left-hand side. And so this is actually a demonstration that was done by Lisa Atkins and the team when I was going through my IC Agile Expert and Coaching certification. And so you look at the X-Wing that came out, and now you look at how Lisa's actually showing it. And what Lisa did was she actually aligned this competency framework to Integral Agile. And actually Michael and Lisa did this after they came up with this original framework. So now to look at this, so we basically this is the X-Wing that Nitin just described. And so what they did is they moved coaching over here, they moved mentoring over to where coaching is, and they moved facilitation, and then switched teaching, and then they moved transformation mastery and switched it with technical mastery. And so now, look how this aligns with what Nitin I just showed you, where professional coaching aligns with I, and mentoring it, teaching is under it's, and facilitations under we. And also, if you look at the transformation mastery and the technical mastery is more on the exterior side. And so it's just really interesting. However, Lisa decided not to republish it. She felt that it was so well distributed and so well used, she didn't bother updating it to support Integral Agile. So I'm not sure if you'll see this in many places and in many writings. It just so happened that I happen to be lucky to be at that workshop where this was actually shown and described. Okay, so now we have last thing for you to do is going to be on Mentimeter, where we have the 4 quadrants, I, it, we, and it's. And so when you're working with a squad, where would you focus first? Would you focus on all 4 areas? Would you focus on one area? Now I'll give you a little bit of a tip. If your first choice would usually indicate your bias, so you should keep that in the back of your mind. Like if you seem to be gravitating toward one quadrant over the other, it's because you're probably more comfortable in that space. So let's jump over the Mentimeter again. This is I promise you it's only one last time, and so we'll get that going. This is when you can appreciate having 2 screens. We go here. And present. All right, so now you should be able to actually provide your input on this. And whoever put I in, that definitely is something where I gravitate toward, because I love the Agile values and principles. It seems like a lot of people miss that part. When they join an Agile team, they're kind of just told to start doing Scrum, and they don't know why they're doing Scrum. So this is just this is just for you. It practices and roles would be also help. Basically, because if you're not doing Scrum right, and the we people are pretty cool because it's really all about the team. And then finally the it's environment. So these are just things for you to think about, and hopefully you found this to be helpful. And let me just get back to the PowerPoint. Okay, and we shared the integral model, all right? And so it's not just for Agile teams. They called it Integral Agile. Ken Wilber came up with the integral model. Lisa and Michael Spade actually created Integral Agile. And so if you look at it in the I quadrant, like if you turn it into medicine, and again, we as Agilists are not qualified to treat mental health, so don't even go there. But if you think about it, the I quadrant would be the introspective, the cognitive. The it quadrant would be the different medications and the physical treatments. And then the we quadrant would be, what kind of support do you have? Do you have good, is there good intentions in it? Are you getting good family support? So here's, just showing just one example of how you can use the integral model for other things besides just Agile. And so it goes even bigger. So now let's say you didn't, you're thinking, hey, it's more than a team. So now you can actually use it at the enterprise level, where basically the I quadrant could represent your leadership. The IT quadrant would be definitely the different products and technologies and competencies the company uses. And the we quadrant could be the organizational culture. And then basically the its environment could be the organizational architecture and the structure. So this is just sharing, I was introduced this model about 8 years ago and my head was spinning. And I hope it was simplified enough by Nitin and I where your head is not spinning, but it's really cool. And we hope, we left you with some tools that you'll be able to use. And so we probably showed you this before, but a good quick way to get feedback is if you're sitting in a room or if everybody's on their Zoom camera, you could say, okay, if we're doing great, put up 5 fingers. If you thought it was terrible, you put up no fingers. If it's just okay, maybe 2. And so this is great where you can, if you're having a meeting or working with a team, you could just say, hey, let's do a check. How's everything going? And so you can basically, do the fist of 5 and say you get a bunch of 0s and 1s. Then you can say, hey, what can we change? What can we do differently? Partway through the presentation, I did ask if this was making sense, to give you that chance to give that feedback. But the whole idea is you don't have to wait to the end to find out that it was terrible. You can find out near the beginning and maybe even change things. And so with that, and if you're in a group that everybody's happy, everybody be putting up 5. So with that, we're now going to the Q&A portion of it. And Nitin and my contact information are here. And so let's open it up for questions. Or is everybody giving it a 0 because they were sleeping?
Feel free to turn on your cameras and your microphones to ask your questions if that would be easier.
Hi, it's Larry Solo, not camera ready. I guess I'm curious about a diagnostic and some thoughts or options that you might have. Is this a thing that you would ask an RTE or an Agile coach to do, the team to self-assess, all of the above? Is there a best practice or an experience you've had about how to move it beyond just the Scrum Master?
That's a great question. Go ahead, Bob. You go
sure.
first.
Again, if you're just working with your team, these are good discussion items to find out where your team's mindset is. But at the team level, it's great. But if you want to have an impact on the organization, you would want to, maybe work with your transformation office or the group that has the Agile coaches where they could actually do this across, all the teams and then basically, get a good view as far as how Agile is in the organization and then come up with plans to actually help. It could be some training, or it could be maybe some people need some mentoring. Because a lot of times product owners are put into the role and they don't really understand, what it is they're supposed to do. And so to me, the product owner role can make or break a team. And you also need a Scrum Master that actually knows what you're doing as well. Otherwise, you're kind of just going through the events and not really knowing why. And again, this is just one tool in your toolbox. And, it's not going to solve everybody's problem, but it's a tool to kind of help you to see where things are. And also, you now have a new tool when you're working with your team. You can see what's going on. You could say, okay, how is the team doing? How are we actually following the practices and the roles? Or how's the team behaving? How's the team working together? Are they playing the blame game? And what is the mindset of people? Do they really understand, they're on an Agile team, but do they really know what that means? So it's just a combination of things. Did you have anything you want to add, Nitin?
All good stuff there, Bob. I think depending on your role, also, as Larry was asking, whether you're a Scrum Master, RTE, or perhaps an enterprise level coach, the focus could be a little different. So Scrum Masters typically, when I played that role, they want to get into self-organizing. And then I get into, okay, do we have team norms? Do we have team agreements? If yes, what do they look like? And then we also get into the event and so on. And then I have like a weighted scale for an assessment to see what's going on over there. And the focus is they're going to be more on one of the quadrants. If you are working with a multitude of teams and looking at perhaps a program level or an organizational level, then the assessment expands. And then you might tap into RTEs should they wish to do something like that and facilitate assessments. And depending on how receptive the organization is at an enterprise level, you might already have some assessments. If not, you could leverage something here as well. So I just wanted to make sure I address like those three levels or roles that Larry had asked, or where they could be used or who could be using them. It could be at different levels. Larry, did we answer your question? Or more questions come to mind?
Scott has his hand up.
Yeah, I'm new to Agile. This is only my third session, and this is the first time I'm hearing about integral Agile. I like the presentation of it. It was excellent. And I'm just wondering, because it was an awful lot to grasp, are there resources that we can go to online to get kind of a general idea of what goes into integral Agile and kind of deepen my knowledge from there?
Yes, there is, and what we could do is we could actually post the links in the chat. But there's Michael Spade wrote a book. It's a black book. I believe it's called Integral Agile. Before Michael got sick, he started writing it, and finally, he went into remission, and he was able to finish it. It's a really good book, and a lot of the content from that book was used in the presentation. There's a great Ken Wilber. He's got a great book on reinventing organizations, and this is not a very beginner type of topic. It's a more advanced type of topic, because what we try to offer to this group is stuff that's simple and stuff that's more difficult. But this is definitely on the edge of on the higher scale of complexity and really understanding like how teams work. Because if you really think about it, using those four lenses, you can really start figuring out what's going on. And what I'll do is I'll put some of those links in the chat. So then,
also,
did you
to
have
supplement
something?
what Bob said, the traditional coaching stance, the four stances, along with the coaching wheel that's evolved, is on the Scrum Alliance website, and I've just posted a link to that as well. So that will give you a little bit of a history and the evolution, and it'll eventually tie itself into the topic.
Are we going to get a copy of the presentation by any chance?
We haven't done that in the past, but if you reach out, we could share it with you individually. Sure.
Thank you.
We usually post it online, so once you log in to your member portal area, then you'll be able to access the recording and the area.
The recording should be up in about within 7 days, 7 to 10 days, but usually very soon. Any other questions for Bob or Nitin?
And the actual website is called Integral Agile. So I just put the link out there. That, Scott, that might be a good place to start. And let me send it, see if I can find that book by Michael Spade. It's a good book. I couldn't take it all in on one reading, but if you could pick it through with it, because Michael's his focus is more on the transformation of an organization. And throughout my career, I've always been very interested in teams, getting the teams to work better. That's always been my interest. So I kind of just always, whenever I look at stuff, I always think about how can I help my team? How can I make my team better and stuff like that? So that's where my focus has been. And so let me see if I can find that book, and I'll put the chat out there in the chat.
So I have a question. So in your experience, you said that you've kind of been exposed to this in about, for about 8 years. Some of the questions there, like, unhealthy activities like blame and micromanaging and stuff is pretty hard when the team when you see that, and then when you present that, right? Like, you have team members who blame each other. Like how do you address that? Like when you present to the team, or when you present to your leadership to kind of try and change that, like how do you address that? Because these are some of the things which are hard to discuss. You have a team which has all these unhealthy, I mean, especially with micromanaging, and blaming each other, and some of these things are tough to discuss. How do you, based on experience, how do you address that?
That's a great question. Bob, could I take that on first?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so if I could have you take a small step back, and this is just my experience and what's worked for me, the first thing is don't try to solve for anything. Instead, reveal, right? So a lot of what you saw in the presentation, we just called out more explicitly as examples. But if you had an opportunity, let's say as a Scrum Master coming into the team, ask more of the open-ended questions to say, hey, what's working for this team? And let the team give you some answers and capture them and reflect. Or, hey, what's a pain point for this team? Let the team speak or articulate and capture that. And you'd be surprised that you find people very forthcoming, and you also find people who are shy. And that'll tell you about the system in place that's over here. Sometimes you do have to call out then explicitly what you are seeing, objectively with a neutral stance, hopefully in a non-threatening way. And you can simply say, hey, over the last 2 weeks or a few days, I have seen blame. And you don't have to name a person or an entity or talk about it at a particular meeting, right? Keep it simple, lightweight, so you are truly reflecting things first. And sometimes having that acknowledgement or revelation can be empowering to people, right? And it depends on the culture and willingness of the organization as how to deal with that. So I'm intentionally slowing you down and just giving you a little bit of what I did. And once these acknowledgements are in place and things are more explicit, then we can try to figure out what we can do about it. Again, not with the mentality to solve for, but perhaps to see how we can work with, given what we have, and then take it from there. So I don't know if I answered your question in the best of ways, but that's just one approach in my experience.